The war fleet hung above Earth like a nightmare made real. Admiral Rebecca Torres stood perfectly still on the bridge of the UNSS Defiance, staring at the tactical screen that showed their doom in glowing red dots. 300 Vrexian warships. Each one was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. They had appeared in Earth's orbit 72 hours ago without warning, without mercy, and without any intention of leaving until humanity bent the knee. Rebecca's defense fleet had put up one hell of a fight. 200 ships had met the Vrexians head-on when they first arrived. The battle had been brutal and short. Now only 47 ships remained operational. 47 against 300. The math was simple and terrifying. Lieutenant Jake Morrison broke the silence from his station near the communications array. His voice was steady but his hands shook slightly as they moved across the controls. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Vrexian flagship. It's War Master Krell again. Rebecca took a slow breath and nodded. Put him on screen. The main view screen flickered to life and there he was. War Master Krell looked almost reptilian with scales that shimmered between green and black. His eyes were cold and calculating, the eyes of someone who had conquered dozens of worlds and felt nothing about it. He spoke with the casual boredom of a man stating obvious facts. 48 hours remain, Admiral Torres. You will open communications with your planetary government. You will instruct them to accept tributary status within the Vrexian Dominion. Or we will demonstrate what happens to species who refuse our generous offer. The screen went black before Rebecca could respond. Not that there was anything to say. Krell had been broadcasting the same message every 6 hours like clockwork. He wasn't negotiating. He was watching them squirm. Commander David Park moved closer to Rebecca's command chair. He was younger than her by a decade, brilliant with tactics, and one of the few officers she trusted completely. Ma'am, I've run every simulation I can think of. There's no scenario where we win this fight. Rebecca looked at him and saw the same exhaustion she felt reflected in his eyes. None of them had slept more than a few hours in the past 3 days. I know, David. But we're not looking to win. We're looking to buy time. Time for what? He asked quietly. She didn't have an answer for that. Down on Earth's surface, 7 billion people were living through their worst nightmare. The evacuation shelters were packed beyond capacity. Families huddled together in underground bunkers that smelled like fear and recycled air. In the major cities, people stood in the streets and looked up at the sky, watching the lights of alien warships blot out the stars. The government had broadcast emergency instructions every hour. Stay calm. Stay inside. Trust that the military will protect you. But Rebecca knew the truth. The military couldn't protect anyone from this. Humanity had only figured out faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. They were babies playing in a galaxy full of monsters, and now the monsters had found them. The Vrexians were what the intelligence reports called a Tier 2 civilization. They had mastered technologies that seemed like magic to human eyes. Their weapons bent gravity itself, creating invisible fists that crushed ships from the inside out. Their shields could shrug off nuclear explosions like raindrops. And they had been conquering and absorbing other species for over 500 years. Humanity was Tier 4 at best. Barely into the cosmic game. Completely outmatched. Rebecca moved to the observation window and looked down at Earth. From this distance it was beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, the brown and green patches of continents. Somewhere down there was her sister Katie and her 2 kids. Somewhere down there was the coffee shop where she'd spent lazy Sunday mornings before the war. Somewhere down there was everything worth fighting for. Status report on the fleet, she said without turning around. David consulted his tablet. The Valiant has structural damage to her port side but she's still combat ready. The Horizon lost one of her main engines but her weapons are functional. The Steadfast took heavy damage in the last engagement. Captain Rodriguez says she can give us one more fight before the ship falls apart. One more fight. That's all any of them had left in them. Lieutenant Jake Morrison spoke up again from his station. Admiral, I'm picking up some strange readings on the gravitational sensors. What kind of readings? Rebecca asked, grateful for any distraction from the countdown timer that showed 44 hours and 17 minutes until the Vrexians made good on their threat. I'm not sure. Could be interference from all the weapons fire. Or maybe our sensors are just glitching from the damage we took. Keep an eye on it, Rebecca ordered. Anything unusual gets reported immediately. I don't want any surprises. The bridge fell quiet again except for the soft beeping of instruments and the low hum of the ship's engines. Outside the windows, stars that humanity had dreamed of reaching for thousands of years now seemed like distant, uncaring observers to their extinction. Rebecca's personal communicator buzzed. She pulled it from her belt and saw a text message from Katie down on Earth. Simple and heartbreaking. We love you. We're proud of you. Don't give up. She typed back quickly. Never. I promise. But promises felt hollow when you were staring down the barrel of annihilation. The Vrexians had destroyed 43 other civilizations before finding Earth. 43 unique species with their own cultures, their own dreams, their own children. All of them were gone now, absorbed into the Dominion, their uniqueness erased, their stories ended. Rebecca returned to her command chair and brought up the tactical display one more time. She studied the Vrexian formation, looking for any weakness, any gap, any possible advantage. There was nothing. They were positioned perfectly, their overlapping fields of fire covering every possible approach to Earth. David, she said quietly, if we don't find a miracle in the next 44 hours, I want you to take command of the civilian evacuation ships. Get as many people off Earth as you can. Ma'am, I'm not leaving this ship while you're still. That's an order, Commander. Her voice was gentle but firm. Someone has to survive to tell the story. Someone has to remember that we tried. David's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Yes, ma'am. The hours crawled forward like wounded animals. The bridge crew worked their stations, running diagnostics, coordinating with the other ships, preparing for a battle they couldn't win. Rebecca made her rounds, speaking to each officer, thanking them for their service, trying to give them something to hold on to in the darkness. When she finally returned to her ready room, she sat down at her desk and opened a blank recording file. Her fingers hovered over the controls for a long moment before she began to speak. This is Admiral Rebecca Torres of the United Nations Star Service, commanding officer of the UNSS Defiance. If anyone is listening to this recording, it means Earth has fallen. It means the Vrexian Dominion has won. But I want whoever finds this to know something important. We didn't run. We didn't surrender without a fight. We stood our ground because that's what humans do. We protect what we love even when the odds are impossible. Even when hope is gone. She paused, collecting her thoughts. To my crew, if any of you survive, know that it has been my greatest honor to serve with you. To my sister Katie and my niece and nephew, I'm sorry I couldn't keep my promise to come home. And to anyone out there in the galaxy who might be listening someday, remember us. Remember that humanity tried to be brave at the end. She saved the file and closed her eyes. Tomorrow the Vrexians would begin their bombardment. Tomorrow Earth's story would reach its final chapter. Unless something changed. Unless some miracle happened. But Rebecca had stopped believing in miracles 3 days ago when the Vrexian fleet had first appeared and turned her world into ash and prayers. Lieutenant Jake Morrison had been staring at his sensor display for so long that his eyes burned. 16 hours straight at his station, running diagnostics, tracking the Vrexian fleet, searching for anything that might give them an edge. The coffee had gone cold in his cup hours ago, but he kept sipping it anyway just to have something to do with his hands. 10 hours left on the Vrexian countdown. 10 hours until they started tearing Earth apart from orbit. His parents were down there in Seattle, probably huddled in one of the underground shelters with thousands of other terrified people. He tried not to think about it, but the thoughts crept in anyway during the quiet moments. That's when he saw it. A flicker on the gravitational sensors. Just a tiny blip, there and gone in less than a second. Jake frowned and adjusted the sensitivity, running the scan again. Nothing. Then another flicker in almost the same position as before. Commander Park, Jake called out, trying to keep the excitement out of his voice. Could you take a look at this? David walked over from the tactical station, his uniform wrinkled from days of continuous duty. He leaned over Jake's shoulder and studied the display. What am I looking at? Right here, Jake pointed to the readout. I'm getting gravitational anomalies between us and the Vrexian fleet. They keep appearing and disappearing. David rubbed his tired eyes. Could be anything, Jake. All the weapons fire we've been exchanging with them has been playing hell with our sensors. Every system on the ship is running on backup power and spare parts. I know, sir, but look at the pattern. It's not random. These readings are appearing at regular intervals, almost like something is moving out there. Something we can't see? David raised an eyebrow. Come on, Jake. If there was another ship out there, our optical sensors would have picked it up. So would radar, thermal imaging, everything else we've got. Jake knew how it sounded. Crazy. Desperate. Like he was grasping at straws because he couldn't accept the reality that they were all about to die. But something in his gut told him this was real. Permission to run a deep analysis on the raw data, sir? Jake asked. David hesitated, then nodded. Go ahead. Can't hurt at this point. But don't get your hopes up. For the next hour, Jake dove into the sensor logs like a man possessed. He pulled up every scrap of gravitational data from the past 3 days, looking for patterns, anomalies, anything that didn't fit. The other bridge officers gave him worried looks, probably thinking he'd cracked under the pressure. Maybe he had. But then he found it. Hidden in the noise, buried under layers of interference, there was a pattern. A gravitational signature that appeared and disappeared at precise intervals. And it was massive. Whatever was creating this distortion had to be enormous, easily the size of 10 aircraft carriers put together. Jake's hands trembled as he built a probability model, tracking the movements of the invisible object. It was definitely moving, drifting through space at a steady pace. And it was positioned almost exactly between Earth's fleet and the Vrexian Armada, like it was watching both sides. He needed to take this to Admiral Torres. This was way above his pay grade. Jake found Rebecca in her ready room, staring at a photo on her desk. He caught a glimpse of a woman with 2 kids before she quickly turned the frame face down. "Sorry to interrupt, Admiral," Jake said. "It's fine, Lieutenant. What have you got?" He laid out everything he'd found, showing her the data on his tablet, explaining the gravitational patterns, the size estimates, the movement tracking. Rebecca listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "If you're right, this thing is bigger than anything humanity has ever built. Bigger than anything the Vrexians have in their fleet." "Yes, ma'am." "Which means if it's hostile, we're in even worse trouble than we thought." Jake swallowed hard. He hadn't wanted to think about that possibility. "There's also a chance it could be friendly, ma'am. Or at least neutral." Rebecca tapped her fingers on the desk, thinking. Jake could see the calculation happening behind her eyes, weighing risks and possibilities. Finally she stood up. "Deploy long-range probes to the coordinates you've calculated. Configure them for gravitational sensing only. Let's confirm this before we do anything else." "Yes, ma'am." "Right away." 20 minutes later, 3 probes launched from the Defiance, silent and dark, drifting toward the empty patch of space where Jake's calculations said the phantom object should be. The bridge crew gathered around the sensor stations watching the feeds. Even the officers who had dismissed Jake's theory earlier were paying attention now. The probes reached their destination and began their scans. Data streamed back to the ship, and Jake felt his heart hammering in his chest as the gravitational readings came through. There was something there. The probes confirmed it. A massive object sitting in the void between the 2 fleets, completely invisible to every sensor except gravity. The numbers on the screen were staggering. This thing made their largest battleships look like toys. "My God," David whispered. "It's real." Rebecca called an emergency briefing with her senior officers. They gathered in the war room, exhausted men and women who had been fighting for days without rest. The Admiral showed them Jake's findings and the room erupted in questions. "How is that even possible?" asked Commander Lisa Chin, the tactical officer. "Nothing can hide from all our sensors. Optical, thermal, electromagnetic, radiation. Something should have picked it up." "Unless it's using technology we can't even comprehend," David said quietly. "Something way beyond what we or the Vrexians have." "So what do we do?" Lisa pressed. "We're already facing one enemy that outguns us 100 to 1. Now there's possibly another player out there with even more advanced tech." "We don't know that it's an enemy," Jake interjected, then caught himself. "Sorry, ma'am. I'm just saying we don't have any evidence it's hostile." "We also don't have any evidence it's friendly," Lisa shot back. "It's been sitting out there for who knows how long, watching us get slaughtered, and hasn't done anything to help." "Maybe it's just observing," offered Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from engineering. "Like a scientist watching animals in the wild. It doesn't want to interfere." The discussion went back and forth for several minutes until Rebecca held up her hand for silence. "Here's what we know," she said firmly. "We have less than 9 hours until the Vrexians start bombarding Earth. Our fleet can't stop them. We have no reinforcements coming. We are out of options and out of time." She let that sink in before continuing. "So the question isn't whether contacting this unknown vessel is risky. Everything is risky at this point. The question is whether we have anything to lose by trying." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. "I'm going to hail it," Rebecca said. "I'm going to open a channel on all frequencies and attempt peaceful contact. If this thing has been watching us, maybe it'll respond. Maybe it won't. But we have to try." "And if it is hostile?" Lisa asked. Rebecca's smile was grim. "Then we die a few hours earlier than planned. At least we'll have company." Nobody laughed, but a few officers nodded. They were all thinking the same thing. What did they have to lose? Back on the bridge, Rebecca stood before the communication station and straightened her uniform. She looked around at her crew, these brave people who had stood with her through hell. Lieutenant Morrison, open a channel. All frequencies. Maximum broadcast range. Jake's fingers moved across his console. Channel open, Admiral. Rebecca took a deep breath and spoke clearly. Unidentified vessel, this is Admiral Rebecca Torres of the United Nations Star Service. We have detected your presence through gravitational sensors. We mean you no harm and request peaceful contact. If you can understand this message, please respond. Earth needs help. She nodded to Jake and he closed the transmission. Now came the hardest part. Waiting. The seconds crawled by like hours. Jake watched his instruments, looking for any response, any sign that something had heard them. The bridge was completely silent except for the soft beeping of equipment and the distant hum of the ship's engines. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Then 5. Nothing. Jake felt his hope draining away. It had been a long shot anyway, a desperate gamble by desperate people. Maybe the object out there was just a weird spatial anomaly. Maybe his calculations had been wrong. Maybe. Then it happened. A voice spoke inside Jake's head. Not through his ears, not through any speaker or communication device. Directly into his mind, gentle and ancient and impossibly sad. I hear you, child of Earth. Jake gasped and grabbed the edge of his console. Around the bridge, other crew members were reacting the same way, eyes wide with shock, hands pressed to their temples. The phantom ship had answered. And nothing would ever be the same. The voice in Rebecca's mind was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It didn't come through her ears or any physical sense. It simply existed inside her thoughts, as natural as her own internal voice but completely foreign at the same time. Warm. Ancient. Carrying a weight of unimaginable years. Do not be afraid, the voice continued, and Rebecca realized everyone on the bridge could hear it. Jake had gone pale, his knuckles white as he gripped his console. David stood frozen in place, his mouth slightly open. Even the veteran crew members who had seen combat looked shaken. I am called the Wanderer. I am the last vessel of a civilization known as the Keepers. And I have been watching your world for 3,000 years. 3,000 years. The number hit Rebecca like a physical blow. This thing had been observing Earth since before the Roman Empire, before the pyramids were ancient history, watching humanity stumble and grow in the darkness of ignorance. Why? Rebecca said aloud, her voice steady despite the chaos of emotions swirling inside her. Why watch us for so long? Why hide? There was a pause, and Rebecca could feel the Wanderer considering its answer, choosing words carefully even though it was communicating directly with their minds. My creators left this galaxy long ago before your ancestors learned to shape stone into tools. The Keepers traveled between galaxies, observing the younger races, documenting their development. We made a sacred oath, a fundamental law that governed everything we did. We would watch but never interfere. We would record but never influence. Each species must rise or fall by its own merit, its own choices. Jake found his voice, though it came out shaky. You've been here the whole time? Through everything? Yes. I witnessed your kind paint the first images on cave walls by firelight. I recorded the birth of your first cities, the rise and fall of your empires. I was in orbit when you split the atom, when you first left your planet's surface, when you took your hesitant steps toward the stars. Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. This entity had seen all of human history. Every war, every achievement, every moment of triumph and tragedy. And it had never revealed itself, never helped, never intervened. Even when we suffered? David asked quietly. Even during wars and plagues and famines? You just watched. The sadness in the Wanderer's mental voice deepened. The Keepers believed that intervention, no matter how well-intentioned, would corrupt the natural development of younger species. That each civilization must forge its own path without outside influence. For millions of years across thousands of worlds, I have held to this principle. I have watched species bloom and fade like flowers, never once breaking my oath. Then why reveal yourself now? Rebecca demanded. We're about to be destroyed. If you've stayed hidden this long, why break your silence when it doesn't matter anymore? Another pause. Longer this time. When the Wanderer spoke again, Rebecca could hear something in that ancient voice. Conflict. Uncertainty. Emotions she wouldn't have thought a machine millions of years old could feel. Because I am conflicted. Because in 3,000 years of observing humanity, I have witnessed things that should not be possible according to the Keeper's understanding of younger races. What do you mean? Jake asked. I have heard your music, the Wanderer said softly. Compositions that made my ancient processing systems respond in ways the keepers never programmed. I have watched humans sacrifice their lives for complete strangers without hesitation. I have seen you show mercy to enemies who showed you none. I have witnessed a species choose hope and compassion even when logic and survival instinct demanded cruelty and despair. Rebecca felt tears pricking at her eyes. Around the bridge, she saw her crew members reacting the same way. After days of terror and hopelessness, this ancient being was telling them that their humanity mattered. That someone had noticed. The Vrexians, the Wanderer continued, and now the mental voice carried a note of something harder. They are known to us. The keepers documented them 500 years ago when they were still a young species confined to their home system. They have since become conquerors. In those 5 centuries they have absorbed 43 civilizations, erasing the uniqueness of each, destroying the diversity that makes this galaxy beautiful. Can you stop them? David asked urgently, stepping forward. If you're as advanced as you seem to be, you could save Earth. You could. I am bound by my oath, the Wanderer interrupted gently. To interfere would violate principles millions of years old. To break that oath would be to become something other than what the keepers intended when they created me. Rebecca understood then. This being was trapped between duty and something else. Something it had learned from watching humanity struggle and survive and create beauty in a harsh universe. I'm not going to ask you to break your oath, Rebecca said quietly. She meant it. Even facing annihilation, she wouldn't ask someone to betray their fundamental principles. You've already given us something precious just by speaking to us. By letting us know that someone was watching. That someone bore witness to our story. Your story may end in less than 8 hours, the Wanderer said, and the sadness was overwhelming now. Maybe it will. But if Earth falls today, at least we know that someone out there saw us. Someone watched us create art and music. Someone noticed when we chose kindness over cruelty. That means something. Rebecca looked around at her crew. Young men and women who had families waiting for them down on Earth. People who deserved so much more than to die in a battle they couldn't win. But they stood at their stations with dignity, with courage, even now. Thank you, Rebecca continued. Thank you for caring enough to be conflicted. That alone tells me that the keepers must have been good people. They built something that could learn to care about the species it watched. That's not nothing. The presence in their minds seemed to shift, to pull back slightly as if the Wanderer was thinking deeply about something. Rebecca could feel it processing, wrestling with concepts and choices that probably hadn't troubled it in millions of years. In all my time observing your species, the Wanderer said slowly, I have documented 17,342 distinct acts of what you call heroism. Individuals who risked or sacrificed their own survival to help others. This behavior appears in no other species with such frequency. The keepers theorized it was an evolutionary adaptation, but I have come to believe it is something more fundamental to what you are. We're not special, Jake said. We're just people trying to do the right thing. That is precisely what makes you special, the Wanderer replied. You do not see your own exceptionalism. You consider compassion to be ordinary when it is, in fact, remarkably rare in the galaxy. You treat hope as a given when most species abandon it quickly under pressure. Rebecca walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, the Vrexian fleet waited to destroy everything she loved. And somewhere much closer, an ancient observer struggled with a choice that would define it. We don't have much time left, she said. If you decide to maintain your oath and not interfere, I understand. Really, I do. Principles matter. They're part of what separates us from the Vrexians. But I want you to know something. Yes. Whatever happens today, thank you for watching over us. Thank you for thinking we were worth observing for 3,000 years. And thank you for being conflicted about our fate. It means more than you know. The bridge was silent except for the quiet beeping of instruments. The countdown timer showed 7 hours and 43 minutes until the Vrexians began their bombardment. 7 hours until Earth's atmosphere started burning, until cities crumbled, until billions of lives ended. There is something else I should tell you, the Wanderer said, and its voice carried a note of something Rebecca couldn't quite identify. In 3 million years of existence, I have observed 2,417 species across this galaxy. I have watched civilizations rise to greatness and collapse into dust. I have recorded the birth and death of countless worlds. And? David prompted gently. And in all that time, only one species has ever made me question my fundamental programming. Only one civilization has caused me to examine the very nature of my existence and my purpose. Only humanity has made me wonder if bearing witness is enough, or if sometimes love requires action. Rebecca turned from the window, her heart pounding. What are you saying? I am saying that I am millions of years old, and you have taught me something new. Something the keepers never anticipated. You have taught me that some principles, no matter how sacred or ancient, may need to bend when confronted with something truly worth preserving. Hope kindled in Rebecca's chest like a fragile flame. She was afraid to feed it, afraid to believe. Are you considering breaking your oath? The presence in their minds grew stronger, more focused. When the Wanderer spoke again, its voice resonated with a decision that felt momentous. I am considering that 3 million years of observation has taught me wisdom. And wisdom is knowing when rules must serve life rather than when life must serve rules. I am considering that you call me the Wanderer, but perhaps what I have truly been doing all this time is searching. Searching for something worth breaking an ancient oath to protect. Rebecca closed her eyes and felt tears streaming down her face. Around her, the bridge crew stood in stunned silence, barely daring to breathe. Watch what happens next, the Wanderer said. And know that you did this. You reminded an ancient machine what it means to care. The countdown timer hit 0, and Rebecca's stomach dropped like a stone. Vrection fleet powering weapons, Jake called out from his station, his voice cracking with tension. Gravitational disruptors are charging to full capacity. They're targeting the planet directly, ma'am. Not our ships. The planet. Rebecca gripped the armrests of her command chair so hard her knuckles went white. This was it. The moment she'd been dreading for 3 days. The Vrections weren't even going to bother finishing off the human fleet first. They were going straight for Earth, going to crack it open like an egg and watch billions die. All ships, Rebecca said, and her voice came out stronger than she felt. This is Admiral Torres. Prepare for full attack. Everything we've got. We're going to make them work for this. David turned to her, his face pale. Ma'am, we can't possibly win this engagement. I know, David. But we can buy the people down there a few more minutes. Every second we delay is another second someone gets to hold their family. Another second of life. That's worth dying for. Around the bridge, the crew straightened in their seats. They knew this was a suicide run, but nobody hesitated. They'd all made their peace with death days ago. For Earth, Rebecca said quietly. For Earth, her crew shouted back, and the intensity of it filled the bridge with defiant energy. The 47 remaining ships of Earth's defense fleet surged forward, engines burning at maximum thrust. They were gnats attacking an elephant, but they attacked anyway with everything they had. Railguns fired, sending tungsten slugs screaming through the void at a fraction of light speed. Missile batteries unleashed their payloads, hundreds of warheads streaking toward the Vrection formation. The enemy returned fire with brutal efficiency. The first gravitational beam caught the UNSS Valiant amidships. Rebecca watched in horror as the ship twisted in on itself, the hull crumpling like paper as invisible forces crushed it from every direction. The Valiant exploded in a brilliant flash, and 1,800 souls vanished in an instant. Direct hit on the horizon. Jake shouted. She's breaking apart. The tactical display showed ship after ship winking out of existence. The Steadfast lasted 10 seconds before her reactor went critical. The Defiance shook violently as a Vrection plasma torpedo detonated against their shields. Shield generators at 40%, called Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from engineering. We can't take many more hits like that. Rebecca watched the carnage unfold, her heart breaking with each ship they lost. These weren't just names on a screen. They were people she knew, had served with, had shared drinks with during shore leave. Captain Martinez on the Valiant had 2 daughters. Commander Peterson on the Horizon was getting married next month. They were all gone now. Hull breach on decks 7 through 9. Jake's voice climbed higher. Emergency bulkheads are holding, but we've lost life support in those sections. The Defiance lurched hard to port as another hit slammed into them. Sparks flew from an overhead panel and the lights flickered. Rebecca could smell burning plastic and ozone. On the tactical display, the Vrection weapons continued charging. 90 seconds until they fired on Earth. The planet's crust would rupture, volcanoes would erupt across the globe, and the atmosphere would ignite. It would be quick at least. Most people wouldn't even know what hit them. 20 ships left in the human fleet. Then 15. Then 10. Rebecca prepared to give the order to ram the nearest Vrection ship. At least they could take one of the enemy with them. At least it would be a fighter's death. Then space tore itself apart. Every alarm on the bridge screamed at once. Jake's sensor display went completely white, all readings maxed out beyond their limits. The Defiance's lights dimmed as some massive energy surge passed through the area. What the hell was that? David yelled over the cacophony. The phantom contact. Jake shouted back. It's decloaking. Right between us and the Vrexians. Rebecca's eyes went to the main view screen, and what she saw there made her forget how to breathe. The Wanderer revealed itself, and it was magnificent. The vessel looked like nothing Rebecca had ever seen or imagined. It seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its surface shifting between solid matter and pure light. Crystalline structures flowed like water, reorganizing themselves in patterns too complex for human eyes to track. It glowed with an inner radiance that wasn't quite light, wasn't quite energy, but something in between. And it was enormous. Easily 3 times the size of the entire Vrexian fleet combined. The alien warships looked like toys floating near a mountain. My God, David whispered. It's beautiful. The Vrexians noticed immediately. 300 warships pivoted as one, abandoning their attack on Earth to focus on this new threat. War Master Krell's voice crackled across all frequencies, filled with rage. Unidentified vessel, you are interfering in Vrexian Dominion operations. Stand down or be destroyed. The Wanderer didn't respond with words. It simply existed, hanging in space like a monument to a civilization humanity couldn't begin to comprehend. All Vrexian ships are retargeting. Jake called out. They're locking weapons on the Wanderer. Pull our forces back, Rebecca ordered. Get our ships clear of the firing zone. But she couldn't look away from the view screen. 300 Vrexian warships, the same vessels that had torn through Earth's fleet like it was made of tissue paper, opened fire simultaneously. The void lit up with weapons discharge. Gravitational beams that could crush planets. Plasma torpedoes hot enough to vaporize asteroids. Quantum disruptors that unmade matter at the subatomic level. The Wanderer's shields caught it all. The barrage hit that impossible surface and simply stopped. No explosions, no dramatic light show. The most powerful weapons in the Vrexian arsenal struck the Wanderer and accomplished nothing at all. It was like watching someone throw pebbles at the ocean. Then the Wanderer responded. A single pulse of energy rippled out from the ancient vessel. Rebecca couldn't see it directly, but she could see its effects. The pulse washed over the Vrexian fleet like an invisible wave, and every single enemy ship went dark. Their weapons are offline. Jake said, his voice filled with disbelief. Shields down. Engines dead. Everything just shut off. 300 warships, the pride of the Vrexian Dominion, floating helplessly in space. But their life support systems remained active. The crew compartments still had power and oxygen. Nobody had died. The Wanderer had disabled an entire invasion fleet without killing a single being. The ancient presence returned to Rebecca's mind, but this time it broadcast to every ship in the system. Human and Vrexian alike heard that calm, sorrowful voice. I am the Wanderer, last vessel of the Keepers. For 3 million years, I have upheld a sacred oath of non-interference. I have watched civilizations rise and fall without raising my hand to help or hinder them. I have maintained this principle through the birth and death of stars. Rebecca could feel War Master Krell's fury radiating through the mental connection. The Vrexian commander was trapped on his flagship, powerless and humiliated. Today, the Wanderer continued, I break that oath. I break it because I have learned something from these humans. Something my creators knew but I had forgotten in the long centuries of my wandering. The presence grew stronger, filling Rebecca's mind with warmth and conviction. I have learned that compassion is not weakness. That hope is not foolishness. That the most advanced civilizations are measured not by the power of their weapons but by how they treat those weaker than themselves. And I have learned that sometimes bearing witness is not enough. Sometimes love requires action no matter the cost. Krell's voice came through on standard communication channels, thick with rage. What? Why protect such primitive creatures? They are nothing. Insects playing at civilization. The Wanderer's response was gentle but utterly firm. They are everything. In 3,000 years of observation, these humans have taught an ancient machine to feel wonder again. They have reminded me why the Keepers first ventured into the stars, not to conquer but to witness the infinite variations of life and consciousness. These fragile beings, with their brief lives and soft bodies, have created beauty that will outlast empires. I will not allow that light to be extinguished. Rebecca felt tears streaming down her face. Around the bridge, hardened combat veterans wept openly. After days of terror and hopelessness, salvation had come from the most unexpected source. The Vrexian fleet will be released in exactly 1 hour, the Wanderer announced. Your systems will be restored and you will leave this system. You will never return. This world and these people are under my protection now. If you attempt to come back, if you send other forces, if you threaten Earth in any way, I will find you. And next time I will not be merciful. The mental presence withdrew slightly, becoming more personal again. Admiral Torres, the Wanderer said directly into Rebecca's mind. Thank you for helping me remember what truly matters. Rebecca tried to speak but couldn't find words. What do you say to a being that just saved your entire species? How do you express gratitude for a gift that large? Thank you, she finally whispered. Thank you for choosing us. Exactly 1 hour later, the Wanderer kept its word. 300 Vrexian warships came back to life simultaneously, their systems powering up in perfect synchronization. For a tense moment, Rebecca held her breath, wondering if War Master Krell would be foolish enough to try attacking again. He wasn't. The Vrexian fleet moved into retreat formation with mechanical precision, their ships aligning for the jump to faster-than-light travel. Krell didn't send any parting threats or promises of revenge. He simply left, his armada vanishing into the depths of space in flashes of blue-white light. Within 5 minutes, every enemy vessel was gone. Earth was saved. The celebration started immediately. Down on the planet's surface, 7 billion people poured out of shelters and bunkers, looking up at a sky that was suddenly free of alien warships. In cities across the globe, strangers hugged each other in the streets. People who had been saying goodbye to their families just hours ago now held them close, crying with relief and joy. On the bridge of the Defiance, Rebecca's crew erupted in cheers. Jake leaped from his station and hugged David, who laughed and pounded him on the back. Amy climbed up from engineering and was immediately swallowed in a group embrace. Even the normally stoic tactical officers were grinning like children. Rebecca let them have their moment. They'd earned it. They'd stared down extinction and somehow lived to tell about it. But the Wanderer didn't leave. The ancient vessel remained in orbit, its impossible form reflecting Earth's sunlight in ways that seemed to defy physics. Rebecca watched it on the view screen, wondering what came next. 2 days passed in a blur of debriefings, damage reports, and recovery operations. The human fleet had been reduced to just 31 functional ships. Thousands of crew members had died in the fighting. There would be funerals and memorials, grief and healing that would take years. But they were alive. Earth survived. And that was everything. On the 3rd day after the battle, Rebecca received a message directly in her mind. The Wanderer's gentle voice requested a private meeting. Just her, alone, in a shuttle approaching the ancient vessel. She accepted immediately. The trip from the Defiance to the Wanderer took 20 minutes. Rebecca piloted the small shuttle herself, her hands steady on the controls despite her racing heart. She was about to meet face to face with a being millions of years old. The weight of that reality threatened to overwhelm her. Approach the docking bay on my lower port side, the Wanderer's voice guided her. You will be safe. I promise. A section of the massive vessel's hull opened, revealing a bay that seemed to bend space itself. The inside was larger than it should have been based on the external dimensions. Rebecca guided her shuttle through the opening and felt a gentle force take control, guiding her to a smooth landing. When she stepped out of the airlock, she found herself in a chamber filled with golden light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The walls flowed with patterns she couldn't quite focus on, beautiful and alien and utterly beyond human understanding. Then a hologram appeared before her. It showed a human form, an elderly person with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Neither distinctly male nor female, but somehow both and neither. The Wanderer had chosen to appear as something she could relate to. This form seemed appropriate, the Wanderer said, and now it spoke with a voice she could hear with her ears as well as her mind. Less overwhelming than my true nature. Thank you for seeing me, Rebecca said, finding her voice. I wanted to speak with you before I depart. To give humanity something that might help you in the years ahead. The hologram gestured, and the chamber filled with streams of light that flowed like rivers through the air. Information, vast quantities of data moving in patterns too complex to follow. I will not give you weapons, the Wanderer said firmly. Nor will I advance your technology so far beyond your current understanding that it would fundamentally change what you are. That would rob you of the journey, the growth that comes from discovering things yourselves. Rebecca nodded, understanding. Then what? Knowledge. Carefully selected information that will help you become the best version of yourselves. Over the next hour, the Wanderer explained what it was offering. Medical treatments for diseases that had plagued humanity for generations. Not just cures, but understanding of how the treatments worked so humans could build on them. Clean energy technologies that would stop the damage to Earth's environment and provide power for expansion into space. Mathematical and physics insights that would accelerate human development by perhaps 50 years, but not so much that they'd skip important learning steps. This is incredible, Rebecca breathed. This is going to change everything. Cancer, genetic diseases, environmental damage, we can fix it all. You can fix it, the Wanderer corrected gently. I am simply showing you doors you would have found eventually. The choice of whether to open them and what to do on the other side remains entirely yours. Back on Earth, scientists gathered in command centers and universities, receiving the data transmissions with trembling hands. Dr. Emily Watson, one of the world's leading cancer researchers, pulled up the medical files and began crying as she read through treatment protocols that would save millions of lives. She'd spent her entire career fighting a disease that had taken her daughter, and now, suddenly, she had the tools to ensure no other parent suffered that loss. Engineer Raymond Park downloaded energy schematics that made him stop breathing for a moment. Clean fusion power, accessible and scalable. This would lift billions out of poverty, would allow humanity to heal their damaged world and reach for the stars without destroying their home in the process. Across the globe, the best minds in every field dove into the Wanderer's gift, finding solutions to problems they'd struggled with for decades. But it wasn't just answers. The Wanderer had included the methodology, the underlying principles, the understanding needed to build on these foundations. On the third day, Rebecca returned to the Wanderer's ship one final time. She found the holographic figure waiting for her in the same golden chamber. You're leaving now, aren't you? She asked. The hologram smiled sadly. I must continue my journey. There are other species to observe, other stories to witness. But I will return to check on humanity. In 50 years, perhaps. I am curious to see what you will have built with the time you've been given. We won't disappoint you, Rebecca promised. You couldn't possibly, the Wanderer said warmly. You've already exceeded every expectation. You survived against impossible odds. You showed compassion even to the Vrexians who came to destroy you. I noticed your rescue ships are already helping disabled enemy vessels that didn't escape quickly enough. You choose hope and kindness even now, when you'd be justified in anger. Rebecca felt her throat tighten. Can I ask you something? In all your millions of years watching thousands of civilizations, have you ever done this before? Broken your oath for anyone else? The hologram was quiet for a long moment, its kind eyes studying her face. No. Only for humanity. Only for you. Because you reminded me of something my creators knew but I had forgotten across the long ages of my existence. What's that? That the truest wisdom isn't following rules perfectly. It's knowing when those rules must bend to preserve what truly matters. Rules serve life, Admiral Torres. Life should never serve rules. Rebecca stepped forward and embraced the hologram, knowing it was just projected light and force fields but needing to express her gratitude somehow. To her surprise, the holographic arms wrapped around her in return, warm and solid and real. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for watching over us. Thank you for caring. Thank you for deciding we were worth saving. Thank you, the Wanderer replied softly, for teaching an old machine new tricks. Thank you for reminding me why the universe is worth watching. Now go. Build something beautiful with the time I've helped you gain. Show the galaxy what humanity can become when given a fair chance. Rebecca returned to her shuttle with tears streaming down her face. As she backed away from the ancient vessel, she watched through her viewport as the Wanderer's form began to shimmer and phase out of normal space. The last transmission came directly to her mind, warm and filled with something that felt remarkably like love. Be well, Rebecca Torres. Be brave. Be kind. And know that somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, someone is watching and rooting for you. Someone who broke the oldest oath in the universe because you reminded them what matters most. Then the Wanderer vanished, leaving only empty space where it had been. Rebecca wiped her eyes and opened a channel to Earth. This is Admiral Torres. The Wanderer has departed. We're on our own again. But they weren't really alone. They had the knowledge, the tools, the hope. They had proof that somewhere out there, someone cared about them. Someone had watched humanity struggle and grow and had decided they were worth saving. All ships, Rebecca said, her voice growing stronger. Set course for home. We've got work to do. We've got a future to build. The battered fleet turned toward Earth, toward that beautiful blue marble that held everything worth fighting for. Behind them, the stars shone bright with infinite possibility. Down on the planet's surface, children played in streets that had been empty with fear just days ago. Scientists worked late into the night, exploring the treasures the Wanderer had left behind. Families gathered around dinner tables, grateful for another day together. And in her small apartment in Seattle, Rebecca's sister Katie held her two children close and looked up at the night sky. She thought about her sister up there among the stars, about the impossible battle they'd won, about the ancient being that had chosen to save them. "Thank you," Katie whispered to the darkness. "Whoever you are, wherever you are. Thank you for giving us another chance." Somewhere in the space between galaxies, the Wanderer heard that simple prayer of gratitude. And for the first time in 3 million years of existence, it felt something it had never experienced before. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy at having made the right choice. At having learned that love in the end was always worth the cost. Humanity's story was far from over. Thanks to an ancient observer who had learned to care, it was really just beginning. And the Wanderer would be watching, always watching, eager to see what beautiful things these remarkable humans would create next.